Okay. You getting good sound from her? She's going to say hello to you.
Hello.
Oh yeah, looks good.
All right, would you spell your name for me?
My full name?
Your full name.
Beverly, Beverly. Middle name is, or maiden name is Homewood, Homewood. Married name is Davis, Davis.
Where were you born?
Greensboro, North Carolina.
And what year did you come to the Thompson Orphanage?
September of 1954.
What would have been your age when you came to the orphanage?
I would have just turned 7. Well, I would turn 7 in October that year.
What were the circumstances that required you to have to come to Thompson Orphanage?
Both my parents died when I was young, and nobody in our family could support 3 girls and 2 boys.
5 children.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember your feelings when you came to Thompson Orphanage?
Thompson Orphanage? The only one that really stands out is that I thought Mr. and Ms. Wisnett were the 2 biggest people I'd ever seen in my life. That's the only thing I remember that really stands out. When I first met them, they were the biggest people.
Before you went to Thompson Orphanage, where had you been prior to that?
I was at the Baptist Hospital in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Who had been the adults in your life who had made the decision for you to go to the orphanage?
Well, in my older life, I found out it was my aunt who lives in Burlington, North Carolina. Her name was Frances McPherson.
Did you ever know your mother and father? Did you?
Very little, very little.
Now, talk to me about Mr. and Mrs. Wisnett. Just talk to me about what they were like as people, what were they like personality-wise. Just talk as long as you want to about those 2 people and what the nature of your interaction with them was.
I think Mom was the most stern because she wanted us to have the best manners of anybody that walked around Charlotte. Pop was a little bit more lenient. To me, he was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I would kill to go out to the farm just so we could go out there and play or whatever. But we would take off and go out there on Sundays, go swimming or whatever, and have a cookout. And that was the best time of all. I enjoyed my Sundays in the summertime especially. But Mom and Pop, you know, they demanded us to behave, to learn a lot, to do good in school, to take care of our clothes and everything. And we were treated very well, clothes-wise. And the only thing I didn't like about being raised Episcopalian was having to wear a hat to church every Sunday. I do not like hats.
Well, how did they seek to see that you had the best manners possible and that you did well in school? How did they do that? Did they, for instance, when you got a report card from school, did you show it to them? I mean, just talk about how the discipline was administered at the orphanage.
Okay, once we did get a report card, we had to have Mom and Pop sign them. And usually Mom signed them all, Miss Wisnett. And if your grades were not up to at least average, you would be punished by not being able to go out on the weekends or not go to our Hawthorne Center where we all love to go and play sports there. And you were just there punished until your grades came up, or you got a note from your teacher stating your grades have improved.
Well, now, I know that you also had relationships, as I understand it, with matrons who lived in the cottages. Talk to me a little bit about what the nature of that relationship was like between the children and the matrons.
Okay. Well, for me personally, There was one matron in the baby house that she was pretty tough. Very, very mean. But she kept us spick and span. We were never misbehaved anywhere simply because we knew Miss Wisnut thought the sun rose and set in this woman because we were such good behaved children. These are children in first and second grade. So, once I was in the third grade, I got to leave and move to the middle girls' cottage. And I was glad to get out of there because Miss Wilkerson, she was just very, very mean. And the sad thing about it, we had to call her Sugar. And I did not like calling her Sugar. It was just a bad situation for me there, me personally. I don't know how anybody else interpreted it, but for me, I didn't like it. And thank goodness I only had 1 year with this woman. But as far as the other matrons, everything was great. You know, of course, you know, we all had our duties to do. You know, clean up, just like you would, you know, have your children clean up their rooms or help with dinner or whatever. But the matrons really didn't have nothing to do with that. They would set our schedules to do it. You would do 1 month in the dining room, 1 month in the laundry, and that would be about it.
Well, now, did you ever get in any trouble?
Oh, I stayed in trouble.
Well, do you mind sharing with some of the things that might get somebody in trouble?
Well, let's see. Well, one bad thing I did do that I got a spanking for was I signed my teacher's name to my report card, and I got caught at that, so I got a pretty good spanking for that from Miss Wisnut. It's very rare she would spank anybody, but if you got a spanking from her, you know you had really done wrong. So, needless to say, I never did anything like that again. But I am so true to my Scorpio sign. I am very, very inquisitive. And nobody's going to stop me from finding out what I want to find out. I mean, you know, or do what I want to do. That's how I would get in trouble. I stayed home more than anybody when I moved to the big girls' cottage because I got in so much trouble. I can't remember all the stuff I did. Ran away one time, got caught running away, and got brought back.
How far did you get?
Graham, North Carolina.
Where were you going?
Going to see this guy I dated.
Well, now, talk to me a little bit. Did you learn any skills while you were at Thompson Orphanage?
Any skills?
Yes.
Learn how to sew.
How'd you learn?
Of course,
how'd you learn how to
in
sew?
school. But we had an old-timey sewing machine that I just loved to sew on. If anything ripped, you know, we'd go in there, pedal machine, you know, sewed our
Well, now,
sewing.
was the sewing machine at the orphanage, or was it at the school? It
At
was
the
at
orphanage,
the orphanage.
mhm.
You learned how to sew?
Mhm.
Who taught you how to sew?
Well, we learned at school, of course, and home ec. We had to take home ec at school. We had to take home ec, we had to take shop. And the boys even had to take home ec and shop.
Well, now, what did you sew? I mean, did you sew things just for your own personal use?
Yeah, like if, you know, we had a seam rip or whatever, we could sew it on the sewing machine. And usually the house mother would have thread for us and stuff like that.
Were girls encouraged to learn how to sew?
No, not really. Not really.
Did you learn any other skills?
Let's see. We didn't really cook at the orphanage because we had helpers at the orphanage that cooked.
Did you work any in the kitchen? Did you have to do
Yeah.
any kitchen work?
Yeah, we worked in the kitchen.
What kind of work did you do?
We set
in the
tables and cleaned up after, and we washed dishes, and we had an electric dishwasher, industrial type dishwasher. And then, but we didn't actually do any cooking. We would help with stuff that was brought in from the farm, like strawberries, which I dearly loved making strawberries in the kitchen, cooking strawberries to make strawberry jam. And then we did corn, beans. Just like if you grew a garden and your family would get together and clean the corn, chop it off.
Well, how was the food? How was the
Food was excellent. Couldn't have asked for any better food in this world. Excellent, excellent food. I never ate anything bad there, except squash. I don't like squash.
Well, now, I've heard stories about some special Christmases, that Christmases were kind of special times at
They were very
Thompson Orphanage. Talk to me a little bit about Christmases and why they were special.
There was no child at the orphanage that did not get maybe 7 or 8 presents, period. Mom would have us write down on the list from one, I can't remember how many, 10? Was it 7? 1 to 7, what we would like for Christmas. And I remember I wanted a radio, clock radio, on 1 year for Christmas, so I put that down as number 1. And I got a clock radio that year for Christmas. But you put down your 7 items, and we would see Mom in the administrative building at night wrapping Christmas presents. On Christmas Eve, the boys would get the big truck, back it up to the library, and they would put all the presents in the truck by cottage and go put them around the Christmas tree late that night. And they did it to every cottage. So Christmas was wonderful. It really was.
Now, I've heard a story. I want you to confirm whether or not this is true or not.
Okay.
That there was sort of a night set aside for punishing children for spanking. Is there any truth to that? Do you remember anything like that where they'd have like a spanking night, or they'd come in and tell the kids what they'd done wrong and they'd get paddled? Have you heard anything like that?
I've never heard of anything like that.
Did you ever have any visitors come to the orphanage?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
No, who would come?
I had my mama's sister come and visit me with her husband. They came a lot. As a matter of fact, I think my Aunt Lynn and Uncle Raymond wanted to take me and Bobby and keep us. But they worked in the cotton mill, and I guess back then they thought they didn't make enough money to raise us.
Well, did you ever have any, not just family members, but did people ever visit the orphanage? Did preachers come, priests come? I think there was one movie star or something.
There were several of them that came.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about what you remember about that.
Let's see. Oh my gosh, who came, Phyllis? I know
The guy Cliff can't.
the guy that played Tarzan. Steve Reeves came. Who's the guy that gave us the boat? I can't remember. The guy that played Gunsmoke. What's his name?
James Arnett.
James Arnett came out there. Oh gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the guy that gave us the boat. Rod Cameron gave us the boat. Rowboat that we used on the lake. Oh yeah, a bunch of people would come see us. A lot of the kids we would go to school with would come out there to see us. Teachers would come out every once in a while to see us. You know, they were welcome at any time.
Well, now talk to me a little bit about boy-girl dating.
As in,
How'd that work? Did you have curfews? Did you have to be back at a certain time? Was it carefully regulated? Could you just go out and do what you want? I mean, just talk to me about that.
no, we definitely had a curfew. We had to be in at 10:30. Now, that was hard for us girls when we went out on a date to tell our boyfriend, I gotta be home at 10:30. And they look at you so funny, you know. But on prom night, we could get special permission and stay out till midnight. So, and if you did anything wrong or were punished, usually you could not go out the weekend. That was your punishment. You couldn't go out.
Did you ever feel different from other kids because you were at the orphanage? Did you ever feel that anybody ever looked down on you? because, I mean, did you ever feel anything about
No.
those feelings?
None whatsoever. Because the kids at school that knew all of those kids that went to the orphanage, I mean, they were great with us. They were great. And a lot of times, they would want to switch lunches with us. And we would carry a bag lunch to school, and they would want our lunch instead of theirs, and we'd switch lunches with each other.
Well, now, who would prepare your lunch for school?
We did. The girls did, every morning. Slap them sandwiches together and wrap them up in wax paper.
Tell me, when you were, in the early years there at the orphanage, what'd you do for fun? I mean, when I think about girls when I was a little boy and think about what they used to do, they used to play a lot of hopscotch. And
We played that.
I mean, what'd y'all do for fun? What was fun?
We played that. We had swings on the campus. Swings, a jungle gym, trapeze thing. And then we loved playing ball, especially with the boys, because the boys couldn't get over how good us girls were. And we had a basketball court. The guys played basketball all the time. So we had a lot of stuff to do.
Well, now, when you said you played ball, what kind of ball?
Softball.
What position did you play? Do you remember?
Usually shortstop. Or either third base.
Well, now, no place is perfect. There isn't a perfect place.
That's true.
Human beings are never
That's
going to
true.
have a perfect place. Was there anything about the orphanage that you didn't like when you were there?
Didn't like. The only thing I really didn't like was my year with Ms. Wilkerson when I was 7 years old. And I didn't like being punished having to stay home at night and see all the other girls go out for the weekend. That hurt me more than anything, But, me, I was just into everything, so.
Well, I've read some of Stella's, some of the letters that she collected for her book. She was kind enough to let us see it. And I saw things in there like, for punishment, this one girl said that this matron made her stand on one foot.
Oh, yeah, that was Miss Wilkerson. She did that to me. Let me tell you what. Don't laugh. I was in church, swinging my foot, and I hit the bench. One of the little kids I grew up with at the baby house told Miss Wilkerson. And so she thought I needed to stand in the playroom that we never got playing on one foot and swing the other all afternoon. So that's what I did. Stood on one foot and swung the other because I kicked the bench in church. I told you she's a mean old woman. And when she died, Mr. Wisner announced it in the orphanage, and he came and sat on one of the benches after lunch and was talking to me, and he said, "What do you think about Miss Wilkerson dying?" And that was the very first time I had ever said a dirty word to Pop. And I told him I was glad the bee was dead. And I told him some of the stuff that went on there. And he wanted, "Why didn't you come to me and Pearl about it, Miss Wilson?" And we told him, well, we knew Mom really liked Miss Wilkerson because we were such perfect children. And we were perfect around her because we had to be.
She also, thanks for sharing that. I know it's not a pleasant memory in the world. She also talked about the fact that one of the things that was done for punishment, that she got sent to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Go down to the basement.
Same thing in the baby house. She would send you down there to stand for a couple hours or whatever because it was dark down there. And it scared the kids, It scared them.
Well, talk to me, taking all, and you made it very clear that this was associated with that matron, and when you went to the other cottages, there was a different story.
Total different.
Totally different story. On balance, Do you think how do you think being at the orphanage affected you as a person? What lasting impact did being at the orphanage, do you feel, have on you as a person?
Well, I know I got good manners most of the time. Anyway, I think probably the best thing that I did learn was how to treat people. Not to be rude, not to be ugly, and hurt their feelings. Simply because of my little incident with the baby house matron. I think that's the main thing I learned there. Because I certainly wouldn't want anybody to treat me like that again, you know? Or anybody.
What would ever happen? Now, you mentioned that when you were talking to Mr. Wisnett that you mentioned a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
What happened would you get in any trouble? What about cursing? What would cursing do to you?
No, if we did, it was never told to Mom or Pop, you know, if we said damn or something like that. But we really didn't cuss much. We really didn't. But I don't ever remember hearing Mom or Pop cuss or anything like that.
How do you feel about the other people that you still associate with that were with you at the orphanage? Do you feel a special bond with those people?
Yeah, it's like brother and sister, you know? And that's one thing my husband had a tough time with. I took off and went to the beach with a couple of the guys I grew up with at the orphanage. Just to get out of town and have a good time and just cut up with each other. And he could not understand how we could be so friendly and there not be anything going on. But he finally learned.
Well, now, I want you to talk to me about, you mentioned that you got in trouble because you kicked a pew. Was that in St. Martin's Church, or was that in
that was
the
in
chapel?
St. Mary's.
What are your feelings? Now, you live in Charlotte now, don't you? You drive down 4th Street from time to time, up 3rd Street. What are your feelings when you drive by that chapel then? Does it have any feet? Does it pull at you at all?
Well, I love the chapel. I think it's the most beautiful thing in the city of Charlotte. I try to remember how the orphanage was sitting, you know, on the grounds that are out there now, because it made a half circle. And sometimes I'll just sit there and look at it if I'm at the red light, and I can't remember where Keenan Cottage was, or I can't remember where the infirmary was. It's just stupid stuff like that.
Do you have good memories on balance of the orphanage?
Yeah.
Do you have good memories?
Yeah. The orphanage was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm truly convinced the best thing that ever happened to me.
Do you have any feelings about what's happened to the orphanage system and the transition to foster care, and the fact that in the eyes of some people the orphanage was too stern, too disciplined, too hard, too tough? Do you have any feelings about that?
I don't think the orphanage was too tough. I mean, to me, it was like living in a college dorm. You know? You're with all these kids. You know what you got to do. Go to school, do whatever. But as far as nowadays, I think they're dealing with a lot more problem children than they were when we were growing up, because we were just from broken families, or, you know, true orphans, so to speak. And we had nobody in our family that could financially take care of us or raise us. But for today and having to put children in foster care, I don't know about that. If I was a kid, I don't know if I'd want to go to foster care or go to an orphanage. if I knew the orphanage was like the one I grew up in, I would choose to go to the orphanage. But to go with two people that you know absolutely nothing about and have to stay there, I guess you could learn to grow to love them. But the sad thing about foster homes is you're put there, you fall in love with whoever is raising you, and then you're snatched out of it to be put back in the situation you were left to begin with. You know, I don't understand that. Why take them out of a bad situation, put them in a foster care, and then when these bad people are ready to take that child back, snatch them out of a good home and let him back into the so-called renewed home. You see where I'm coming from?
We interviewed Buddy and Boyce Gray.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Buddy said that was really good about the orphanage was you knew what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
That there was a sort of a chain of command, and you knew what the rules were. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. Definitely.
Did you ever feel insecure at the orphanage? Did you ever feel afraid
No.
at the orphanage?
No. Mm-mm.
Did you, tell me about your religious experience. Tell me about going to church, what your feelings were about going to church, when you went to church. Just tell me about church.
The only thing I remember, we went to St. Mary's, and then we'd go to St. Martin's over on 7th Street. The only thing I didn't like about that was having to walk to church in high heels. And back then, I mean, that was a pretty good distance for us young ladies. I hated walking in high heels. I was doing good to get them on to begin with, because I was such a tomboy when I grew up. But as far as the church, we liked it, or at least I did. Besides the hats. I hated the hats.
Well, what did you wear? What was typical attire for?
Oh, Mom dressed us up fine. She dressed us up fine. Good. Very good. Clothes from Belts. Very nice clothes. She got all of our underwear, garments, hose, everything.
Do you think the girls had it easier than the boys at Thompson, or harder than the boys, or you think there just wasn't that much difference?
I don't think there was that much difference. I know working on the farm's not easy. But in October, when the sweet potatoes were coming, the whole crowd would go out there and dig, pull up sweet potatoes. They'd run the tractor through there and dig them up. We'd pick them up, throw them in the thing. But, before that, years ago, it was a standard thing. Farmers and the teachers would have a day off so everybody could go pick up sweet potatoes out of the farms.
Again, remind me, you told me before, and please accept. What year did you go and what year did you leave?
54 to 65.
Were the Wisnets still there when you
Mhm,
left? They were that's just about the time they left, but they
Yeah.
were still there. Did you maintain contact with the Wisnets after they moved back down to eastern North Carolina? Did you have
Yeah.
any?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what contact.
We would go down there and see them. We had our annual reunion down there one year. I went down and went to Bellhaven, went swimming, and went to the Mom and Pop's church down there. We had a great time. Great time.
And your feelings about them are positive.
Very positive. The only thing I feel that everybody really missed out on is somebody loving you or showing you love. Pop would show us love by giving us hugs and stuff like that. But you really grew up not knowing that you were loved. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Now, I knew I was loved by my aunt and uncle that would come to the orphanage to see us all the time. But as far as the house mothers loving us or Mom and Pop would show us love more than Mom would.
When you were little, second grader, when you first went there,
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever sit in anybody's lap? Did they ever rock you in a chair?
Oh, heck no. No. Mm-mm.
Well, if you don't mind, tell me, and if you don't, feel free not to. But I'd love to hear you talk about the circumstances that prompted you to run away and what happened after you came back.
I don't remember. Adventure. I don't know why I ran away. I really don't. What grade? 10th grade? 10th grade maybe? 9th or 10th grade. Anyway, my older sister had left the orphanage, graduated, and had gotten married. And I swear to God, I can't remember why I ran away. I don't know if it was just I needed something to have fun with or do something. Anyway, I hitched a ride to Graham, North Carolina, and went up there and saw my boyfriend. And then his mom and dad called the orphanage and told them I was okay, and that that Sunday just happened to be the reunion, and Brenda and her husband came up to Graham and got me and brought me back to the orphanage.
Well, what happened when you got back?
Well, we had the reunion, and God, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. I'm sure I was punished. Couldn't go out. But I can't remember for how long or anything. Every once in a while, somebody'd run away and they'd come back. Realize, I don't have no warm bed to sleep in or anything. And they'd come back.
What were the dormitories like? Were they sparse? Were they lavish? Did you have nice beds? What were they like?
Well, everybody had a single bed. And all the beds were upstairs. And we had one long room at the back of the cottage that I think had 6 people in it. And then 2 up front of the cottage that had maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 in each room. So, it wasn't lavish or anything, but it was nice and clean.
Did you ever, must have been hot up there in the
It
summer.
was very hot. I do remember that.
Did
very
you have
hot.
fans?
No fans. No fans. But luckily, we had so many trees out there, all of the cottages were covered in shade. That's one good thing about that. But no, we had no air conditioning, no fans.
Now, when you went there, the cows were still there on the old campus, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember walking down where Charlottetown Mall is now and that being a pasture down there? Did you ever?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You think about all these people. They go down there at that whatever it is now, Metropolitan, I think they call it now, where Charlottetown Mall used to be. They have no idea.
Not a clue.
Do you think it's important to keep the memory of Thompson Orphanage alive?
Yeah, I do. I do, because of St. Mary's Chapel. I was baptized and confirmed in that little chapel.
Well, what was Miss Chadwick's first name?
Emily.
Emily Chadwick?
Emily Chadwick.
We interviewed her.
Oh, did you? Mm-hmm. Emily was married in that chapel.
She told me, she said, I was baptized in that chapel.
Mm-hmm.
I was confirmed in that chapel. I was married in that chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And when my day comes, I want to have a memorial service in that chapel.
That chapel, yeah. I think the chapel meant a whole lot more to the kids at the orphanage than going to St. Martin's. I really do. We went to St. Martin's only because they had Sunday school classes. So, I don't know and it was Episcopal. I don't know how they even started going to St. Martin's because they were doing that before I ever came to the orphanage.
Did you just go to the chapel on Sunday? Is that the only day you go?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever sing in the choir?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you been in the chapel much since it's been restored and stuff? Have you been over there and been in
I
it?
go every year. Because we had our reunion out there. Now, this year we decided not to have it out there simply because everybody complained of the heat. And our response to everybody coming back for the reunion is all of our people are getting older. I mean, I'm 65 years old. And I think there was, 2 years after that the orphanage was knocked down and everything. Everybody went out to the new orphanage. So anyway, our alumnus are getting fewer and fewer every year. And we decided to have it at the Golden Corral this year because it's nice and air conditioned. And everybody can pay for their own food instead of having to pay their dues and then pay for eating Saturday and Sunday.
How does it make you feel when you go in the old chapel?
Good, really, because I think it's such a quaint little place. Very relaxing.
You know, the man, and I should know his name, I've got it in my notes, that chapel cost $2,500 to build in 1891, which is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back then.
And the man who gave the money was a Charlotte attorney. And he gave the money in honor of his wife and his daughter. It's a nice story. That's Mr. Osborne. And Mr. Osborne, who was the superintendent from 1887 until 1898, when he left to become a chaplain in the Spanish-American War,
Oh, gosh.
that being superintendent of that chapel near about killed him because he was constantly having to raise money, and build the support for the church there. And was a minister by the name of Wheeler still coming to the orphanage when you were there?
Mm-hmm. He was the preacher at St. Mary's when we were there.
What do you remember about him?
I loved him to death. He could preach a sermon to where a 4-year-old would understand it. He was that good. He was that good. I really, really liked him. And he used to be superintendent over the orphanage.
He preceded the Wisnets.
Mm-hmm.
The Wisnets came in 1940, and Wheeler was prior to that.
Mm.
Do you have anything you'd like to ask?